Hey, welcome back to Conversation Piece. You made it. It's been about 2 weeks since I posted a video. Happy to be back with another video. Got a lot more content on the way. As always, I link all of the information for the people that I interview on this channel down in the description below. So make sure to check that out. There's a lot of really cool stuff. John is so good with art and design and architecture and all that stuff. So really cool, fun stuff to check out. This next video is so good. We cover suicide rates. Japan is amazing. And how community is everything and love is like the one thing that wins all the time. So I won't give away too much, but get ready, buckle your seatbelts. Or don't, we're gonna buckle them. It's gonna be good. Let's do it.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, you kidding me, man?
First of all, shout out to Ethan Dufault. You left your hat on my head, and it's still there. So come get it whenever you want it, buddy. It's right here. Because I'm not a lone wolf. It says lone wolf on here,
right,
but
right.
I'm
sounds
obviously
like
extremely extroverted person. Yeah,
right.
He's more of a lone wolf.
Yes, and he has much hair for a wolf too.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh,
You come close with your facial hair, but
I do. Yeah, I dwarf him whenever. No, that's not true, dude. Gertrude is coming through thick these days. Gertrude is beard.
Oh, it's like who's
that's the name we've given. Yeah, that's our girl Gertrude. Oh, what are we doing already? Basically a Nordic god. That man, I love him. I actually spent a bunch of time with him last night.
Oh, really?
Just dreaming, scheming, and I love that dude. Yeah, he I'm grateful. I feel like I also spent a lot of time with just a lot of people yesterday, and I just went back home. I just hung out with just a slew of people, and most of them, I feel like I left them in shambles, just in pieces, unfortunately. Like I walked away from their lives, and a lot of them I walked away and it was in tears, not because of something that had happened and gone down in our lives, right, or because of me, but just because life was hard, and really difficult. And I, and I feel like in the general sense, like this season that I'm in currently has just been one of pure joy, just joy, dude. Just watching everyone, their lives being transformed. My friends are like all seeing therapists and like getting healed from things that have just been going on in the background for now, like just decades and decades, from like their childhood trauma or whatever it may be, like just slews of like things that have just beaten and gone on in the background, just wars that these people are waging. And now I feel like I'm talking to like these wise vets that are like my homies now. They're like, dude, this is what I've learned. And they're all sages. They're just like all like wise old men and women that are 20,
That's crazy.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's incredible to be a part of this. And so but I was like 2 nights ago I was like sitting up in my room, and I'd been dwelling on this for now like a minute, like for a pretty good amount of time. I had 2 friends last year who committed suicide, and I think we've had like a few friends who are wrestling with mental illness who have come out about it and been like, hey, look, like this is my daily war, and you probably weren't even aware of it. Wow. And so I just been thinking about like the thing that I guess like really got me starting to think about that was I started looking around and being like, who, as opposed to who's here, who's not here. I started looking around at places and being like, who's not here right now? Wow. And being a part of our community, like with the living room and stuff, there's community that's pretty big, and you see people come in and go out, and life's inconsistent, and so naturally like people's participation and involvement fluctuates, and there's nothing wrong with that, like absolutely cool, right. But I see people like coming in and going out, and but then sometimes you just don't see them come back in again for like a long time, and it'll hit you. It's like 2 months, and you're like, oh my, where's so-and-so? Shoot. Like, hey, has anybody seen? And everybody in the community will start to catch on about the same time. Wow. And they'll be like, wait, I haven't seen, you know what I mean? And it's just like wildfire. Everybody starts getting really concerned about that person. Wow. and it's crazy. So I was just sitting in my room, and me and my friend Jordan and like two other dudes, we made this trip like last summer with Griff, which is tight.
Oh yeah.
We took a trip all the way across the country, and
and so you like guys like non-stop driving.
Yeah, like straight up 36 hours through the night, like just do 2 people at a time shifts, and my God, that was
crazy.
Yeah, that car was a cesspool. We returned it
because it was a rental car.
Yeah, we returned it, bro. That thing, they didn't have a limit on miles. They probably do now. I'm sure they switched their policy because we returned that thing in shambles. Like it had dents from huge rocks, and we got all the insurance, and we were just like, "Hey, man, this is what you signed up." But we drove it across the country through like fields of like birds and bugs, and and that thing was just disgusting when we rolled back up. But we did 36 hours one way, and then directly we basically spent an hour and a half. Yeah, we literally spent an hour and a half and then turned around and went another 36 hours straight back home. And we had this friend who was just dealing with like a mental illness for like a really long time. And he basically had like disappeared off the face of the earth. And we were fortunate enough to figure out where he was. And so we were able to like track him down, figured out that he was all the way in this unknown state in the middle of nothing.
Wow.
And we're like, we need to get in a car and we need to go out there and we need to go give this dude a big hug and let him know that he's loved and he's cared about and that he's not alone. And it was awesome. It was super radical, and I mean it made us, it changed us the most. I think it definitely had an impact on this person as well. But I say that, and I tell that story, and I tell that story a lot, and people are like, dude, whoa, man, good for you. That's crazy, awesome. And you're like, what are you talking about, bro? It's crazy not to do that. It's crazy to know that your friend is dealing with something where he might end his existence, and you get a shot at like telling him you love him and to not do that. That's insane to me. That's insane. Yes. What we did is the only thing that makes sense. Yep. Like, it's what you do. And so this rhetoric around like, this is crazy, that's crazy. It's not crazy. That's the only thing that makes sense. You care about people. Right. And this is what's demonstrated for us. Like, we live lives focused, especially, as Christians, as followers of Christ. We live lives focused on other people and asking about who's not here. Who isn't? Who do we not see? What's invisible to us, Lord? Who am I missing? And I'm thankful for the opportunities because God is good, and he's the one who just keeps convicting, and he's the one who keeps like revealing and being like, hey, so-and-so's not here. And he puts it in your heart, and you're like, oh my gosh. Wow. But bro, the numbers are insane. Oh. I'm sitting there going on now like hours just scrolling through statistics and numbers. What is it? Cigna released a big, huge study. They did like 20,000 participants all throughout the United States alone. And they studied 20,000 people. Jeez. Humongous study on mental health. Oh. What they found is that it's insane, bro. What they found is that 1 in every 5 people is struggling with mental health in the United States.
I believe it.
1 in 5. Yeah. 19.1%. Yeah. Are struggling with mental health.
Wow.
Right now. Yeah. It's dumbfounding. I think they said 1 out of every 4 feels like no one understands them. One and then another 1 in every 5 feels like in even times of crisis they have no one to talk to. Wow. Another stat that they put out as well, and this is insane, 50%, dude, every other person feels like in either sometimes or always entirely alone or not, like left out. At all times. You can go 1, that person's left out. 1, that person's left out. 1, That person's left out. This is how insane loneliness is in our area. This is in the United States. Like, loneliness is baffling, bro. It is an epidemic, like, right now. People are so depraved of connection.
Community and people.
Community. And anyone who even cares about their existence at the 100%. End of the day. And so I'm scrolling through these things, and I'm looking at suicide rates. Suicides, oh my God.
Oh, bro.
I was bawling, bro. I was literally bawling the entire time. I'm standing up in my room. I'm standing up in my room, and I got my hands over my head. And I'm just like, Jesus, help us. Because they're... oh, okay. In the age range, 10... Oh, God, I'm going to cry. 10 years old, bro. 10 years old to 36. It is the second leading cause of death is suicide. Second in our age group. Second, dude. Yeah, number 2. Like, I was baffled by that. I was like, are you serious? Wow. When you look at the issue of one of the biggest issues right now facing us in our nation is gun violence. We've talked about this like a lot. But if you look at homicide versus suicide is double homicide. Double. Wow. It double. Yeah. In fact, homicide last time I checked is 19,000 it was the study was done back in 2017. Yeah. And so not that long ago, but still these are old numbers.
Sure.
And from what I've heard, it's still on the rise. Obviously, both these numbers are on the rise. But it was 19,000 and 47,000 for suicide.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. Insane numbers. And so, and the age range of like, so Generation Z is the most, they're the ones with the most mental, like, I don't know, mental health issues of any generation that we've ever seen historically, period.
Really?
Ever. Yeah.
More than millennials.
More than millennials. Yeah, more than millennials. Generation Z is the most. And then the other side of this is there's this crazy bracket, like I was saying, with like where we are at with the 10 to 36 year olds, where we're seeing just incredible amounts of suicide. But specifically guys have four times more tendency to commit suicide than women. Women are at like 6.2, guys are at 22 point something, and I can't remember what it is. 22.7. It's literally insane, dude.
Why did they say?
Yeah, I think they didn't really say, because I think it gets into more of a philosophical realm. They're more just giving like a basis of like a study, the scientific data. But a lot of people commented on this, obviously, that like dudes have a harder time communicating these things because there's a rhetoric around it that's like, we need to be like
tough.
We need to have it together.
Right.
And if you got something going on up there, just shut it up and put it away and move on. Yeah. And guys are really harsh on themselves, but where the suicide rates spike up again in life is at 65 and up. Those numbers of those men committing suicide is astronomical. Like, they are committing suicide at such an intense rate. That's the majority of people committing suicide now is old men. Old men. Yeah.
People that are retired?
Yeah, because they got nobody.
Holy
all
crap.
by themselves, bro.
And no purpose.
No community. Yeah, all their buddies are gone somewhere else. Their wife, they don't have their wife. A lot women do historically a better job of staying connected.
Oh, yeah.
And staying vulnerable and honest.
Yeah, they're way more willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Just generally speaking. And so these old dudes are just suffering alone. And so I was just like, my gosh, like I'm sitting there just scratching my head looking at all this stuff, weeping, and literally just a mess looking at all this stuff. Just like, oh my gosh, how did I miss it? But I was thinking about it, man, and I think, you know, it's easy to say that our culture is a socially starved.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like I
100%.
think after you look at the stats, it's like, okay, like there's no way around it. Like the United States as a whole is scientifically, mathematically, statistically starved.
Wow.
Like socially. You know what I mean? And at that point, you're just like, okay, this is a reality, whether
Yeah.
we recognize it or not. But how is it that we're not talking about this constantly? How come this isn't making constant headlines and constant news all the time? Like, why isn't... Well, it's because the nature of the disease is it's isolated, is it's invisible. You know what I mean? The very nature of it is invisible. And so we have to be, I think I especially have to be more aware of this kind of stuff. So this has just been bleeding in me now for like the last 2 days, and I've been doing like studies on all kinds of things. I was just today studying in Japan. I was in Japan, and so freaking awesome place. I mean, you look at, dude, I'm just convinced that the Japanese people are like the apex of humanity.
Yes.
Like
Without question.
Yeah, just brilliant people. Everything they I'm writing a post on this right now, but I was thinking about the song by the philosopher Big Sean.
Genius philosopher.
Yeah. And I was thinking about a good motto, and I was thinking, everything I do it big. I was like, that's Japan in a nutshell.
Oh my gosh.
Everything they do it big. They go all out. Dan Carlin has this. Have you heard of Hardcore History?
No.
Oh my gosh, dude. Incredible. Like, incredible
Is
show.
It's a show?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Oh,
Well, it's not a TV show. It's just a podcast. And he like rants for like 4 to 6 hours. Super educated dude. And it's just brilliant all the way through. Basically, he does one on like the rise and fall of, really just the rise of the Japanese civilization into like the modern global superpower that it is today.
Wow.
And Dan Carlin like notes, he like talks a lot about like, he writes a lot about how these guys pretty much go from being like a culture of samurai warriors who are just basically locked in the medieval like world forever. And then they're the last people on the planet, the last, big culture to encounter Western civilization. They're the last ones.
No way.
Yeah. And when they do, they're like, holy smokes, like, we got to change everything, because essentially they're just wiped out by modern warfare and modern technology. Wow. And you see this little tiny island out in the middle of the ocean basically band together and be like, okay, we got to change everything. And then you see the Japanese people, basically what they do, it's so brilliant, man. This is so cool. They take and I'm just nerding out right now. I hope that's okay. They basically take these every samurai warrior, and they're like, okay, you're still in allegiance to the emperor, and so take your same core values of to life, like you're sacrificing your life for Japan, for Japan's glory, for Japan's honor, and they're like, you're going to become now like samurai businessmen. And so you see this whole crew of like, what is the samurai culture now go into the business sphere, like all of a sudden. And so these guys, they send out college students, like specifically to certain areas that they hear around the world. They do it all in 2 years. They send out college students everywhere around the globe to study each like specific, like, how do you guys get your wheat or your metals or all that stuff, and who does it best. So they send people all out, and then 2 years they all come back together and they put all their information in a linear format, and then Japan's like, now we do it better than they did. And they just start cranking, dude. They start working and hustling and like just working their butts off. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like they come with a huge fleet, and they just wipe out China's whole fleet in like one go. Make it look like just easy work. And all of a sudden the whole world's like, wait, hold up.
What just happened?
Who's this little island again? And they're
No
like, yeah,
way.
we're Japan. We were the guys, we were the underdog that you never saw coming. They are like, we're not done. They start going into Russia. Like,
What?
they start just infiltrating Russia as fast as they can. And they are just owning everyone, demolishing everything. And they're just taking Russia by storm. The UN is like, what? Hold up. Like, wait a second. Like, you're just we don't know what's going on. They're like trying to basically corral Japan and be like, hey, like,
Stop.
just stop. Like, what's going on? You're taking over the Russia now, and you've just defeated China,
Which is huge. Compared to Japan.
Yeah, and they're just going rampaging. And this is how, like, inevitably we get into the Vietnam War, and because they attack, you know, the single Pacific, the Pacific strongholds for the holdouts, I guess, fortresses or whatever you want to call it, the main base that's in Vietnam for the U.S. And they go and they attack it because basically the U.S. is like, hey, you guys need to stop, and they're like, we're not going to stop because this is. It's a long story. Basically, they shafted them and all this stuff. None of that is my point. I'm just nerding out. But basically, you just see something, and that's why I say the Japanese are like fascinating. But even now, there is this like epidemic over there. It's the highest suicide rate in the entire world.
In Japan.
Yeah, highest in the world. Dwarfs everybody else. Loneliness, depression, everything that we're talking about is highest over there. So while we're over there, we are walking around and we're kind of like, we're checking it out. And this is obviously just like my perspective.
Sure.
I'm in Tokyo. Tokyo is a sick city, which you should definitely check it if you can, man.
Yes.
Like, that place is the coolest. Probably the most inspiring place ever.
That's what
as
I've heard.
designer.
It's like unbelievable.
Oh, dude. Like, it's incredible. I went with another buddy who's an industrial designer. And I went with Ben Yago.
Oh,
My other buddy's Preston. Shout out to Preston if he ever sees this.
we love you, Preston.
Love you. And we were just running around Tokyo. I think we did about 27 miles a day, a full like marathon walking every day.
God.
Feet were
Classic.
done, dude. We all wore like Chuck Taylors. Horrible mistake. And then we went into the mountains and we snowboarded in Hakuba for a long time. But basically, walking around the city was one of the most fascinating social dynamics I'd ever seen. We met up with this guy who lives there, Ben's buddy, and we're asking him about the culture. Like, we're like, hey, we've observed these things. Are these things true? Well, one of the things I had observed is I was like, there's a lot of people, older men and older women, but mostly older men, always walking by themselves. And the place is very quiet. Like, Tokyo as a whole feels like one massive library to me. What? It's just like everybody, you talk like this loud, how loud I just talked, people will be like on the streets, like Manhattan packed, like, and you're like, what, is this guy yelling? And you're like, whoa, hey man, my bad. So you're kind of talking softly, intentionally, like everywhere that you go. It's very gentle. Everything's very like gentle and respectful and quiet. Your tone is very quiet and respectful and soft. And we're Americans over there. And you're like, oh boy. And so
it's pissing everyone off.
Yeah, just, oh man. Oh, it gets crazier than that. And we're walking around the streets and there's just people everywhere, man, flocking everywhere. It's jam-packed but dead quiet. You don't hear a single horn.
What?
And it's bumper to bumper traffic. And you're like, not a single horn. Nothing.
How is that possible?
It's insane. You look at Manhattan and then you go to Tokyo and you're like, the polarities are striking. Wow. But one of the things we asked is about those old guys. I'm like, yo, what's the deal? And they're like, oh, those guys, for the most part, Japan has this addiction to working. And these guys, a lot of them have worked their entire lives. The same thing from being like the Japanese samurai culture of like working has like trickled down through the generation. And so you get this like this honor shame culture, which I'll also talk about in a second because he addresses that as well. In these guys, where they're like basically thinking to themselves, don't F it up. Like just don't F it up. And they live with this insane burden and pressure every single day. So they work all day and all night. I was just reading about this. There's a Japanese word called karoishi,
Okay.
I believe it is, and it's essentially like when a person works themselves to literal death. The Japanese created it in like 1970.
No way.
Yeah, and it's like you collapse from heart failure. You collapse from heart failure or a stroke. You're working and then just
Because you just gone too much.
yeah, it's an epidemic. In fact, it happens so much, that's why they made the word. And so you have these people literally just collapse and die on their desk from working way too hard. And Japan is structured. They have these pods where you can do work that have bathrooms, toilets, beds, desks, everything that you need so you never leave. So these guys will legitimately work like I was reading about the last two victims, that the most recent victims that they've had like die. The one first girl that I read about, she had 147 hours of overtime for the month.
That's like as much as you work in a month.
Yeah, on top of it, the double. Like when you're like, what? And then this other dude had 110 hours of overtime worked. Yeah, 110 hours was the lower one.
And that's just totally acceptable and fine.
Totally. And so
I don't understand that.
Yeah, and also like if you are like disappointing to your like boss, or if you're disappointing or whatever, that's often leads to this overworking is often a product of the burden and the load that you put on your own shoulders and you have to live with every day. And so now you have these old men walking around with this incredible burden on their shoulders, just trying not to F it up. And
no way, they're still working.
And they're working. Oh yeah, dude, they were working forever. And then you have, because the husband is never home in the modern family over in Japan, the wife is often resentful towards the husband. Because obviously he's not around. He's working all day long. Right. He comes home to a resentful wife who's upset at him because he's never around, because he's just trying to do what's honorable. And then you have sons who are raised in the absence of their father, in the absence of a full, holistic, dynamic, well-rounded home.
Holy
and
smokes.
Now you got all these kids being raised in their parents' wealth with Western marketing coming at them. And losing ties to the Eastern like values, but having all of this like pain from it and all of this like systemic pressure from it. And so you just get weird things in Japan. Case in point, like you see kids our age like walking around, hands around their shoulders, just laughing and stuff. And I kept being like, dude, who made a joke? Like,
right, like why is this so
I
funny?
didn't see anyone talking. You guys are just smiling and laughing. I'm like, they legitimately might be stoked. And that's awesome. I hope they are.
Yes.
What I threw by my buddy, I was like, is that real? And he's like, he's like, have you noticed a lot of posters that have like a lot of people like laughing and smiling, and people who we basically present ourselves in the Western world with selfies, smiling with our friends and stuff, laughing, having a good time. So that's essentially what we've portrayed as friendship. So they're looking at the images of friendship and relational connection, and they're like, oh, that's what it looks like. So I'm gonna have that. But they're just seeing laughing. They're not seeing the quintessence of like, oh no, relationships aren't always that. Like it's like brokenness, and it's not always fun, and it's not always like, hey, let's party and all that stuff. It's like, it's this, you know? It's like crying together. It's everything in between. But we were raised in like with all that in mind, with like kind of this different approach to family values.
Right. That
the Japanese just weren't, but they're still getting the Western marketing scheme on family values without the family value. You know what I mean?
Insane.
Yeah. And so a lot of it, I was like, well, wait, hold up. Like the Western, like, right, like we have like a certain idea of like Western values, but you guys talk a lot about like, you talk a lot about like honor and shame. And I was like, is that a thing here for real? And he's like, it's more of a shame culture. And I was like, really?
Wow.
And he's like, because it's not like you don't do it for the honor. You do it for fear of shame. So it's a shame and fear of shame culture. And it's just a burden that people live with. Like, don't F it up. everything I do it big, but don't F it up. You know what I mean?
Not with like the hope of like, you are amazing, good job, so proud of you.
Yeah, it's just like, just don't mess it up, because otherwise it's on you, and you made us look terrible. He told me this story. He said, he's like, in Japan, there's a lot of domestic abuse. And he's like, case in point, he's like, I saw a guy one time punching his wife in the street in the face, just punching her. He's like, ran up, and he's like, I broke it up, and everyone's looking at me, and they're just walking by, like, paying no mind. They're just kind of like, you know, and he's like, and I was like, that's insane. That's so messed up. He's like, yeah, but, you know, also you're bringing your Western value into this, where, like, for them, it's the wise thing to do. Like, you don't know the dynamics. You don't know what's going on. Maybe she's deserving of being punched. And maybe this man is you know, reprimanding his wife, and or vice versa. The wife sometimes will be abusing the husband, or either way around. And so it's better just not to get involved. It's because you could make yourself look like an idiot. Whereas, like, in New York, you're gonna have like 60 dudes like pummeling the dude, like just gang beating this like dirtbag, and not even giving him a second to defend himself.
Doesn't matter
what
happened.
It would just huck him into the subway tracks and like let him die. And you're like, and everyone would be like, "Yep, good riddance." The judge would be like, "Good riddance." Yep, like everybody over here would be like, "What a dirtbag," you know. But over there, it's more. It's just like, I don't want to F it up, you know. And obviously, this is his view of things, and I was just like, my mind is like, poof, like just blown by the differences. But one thing that we all have in common is this value for the hustler, you know, this value for the person on their grind, you know, defining themselves with their improvements, and like self-promoters just competing over and over and over and over, and this networking, like, I use you, you use me, you know, kind of like thing that's just ingrained in us, that doesn't allow for like true community.
No,
you know, true like authentic, broken, messy community. But case in point, the church is thriving over there. Blowing up, dude. Yeah, it's awesome. Japan is blowing up. But you have a lot of people who are skeptics, which is awesome. Sure. It's awesome. Yep. But you presented, and from what he was saying, it was like, it's a very intellectual presentation, because it's very much like, hey, look, like, here's the facts, here's what we understand. But as soon as the Japanese person is like, oh, this is true, then they're like 100% sold out and stoked and like all in every way, and they're super involved, and they're kind of more like the early church, you know? And super involved and like paying off each other's debts. They pull the pace down of like their rigorous schedules and working, and they start submitting themselves to like whatever the Bible says, and their lives just start changing and flourishing, and it's awesome. And so I'm looking at that, and then I'm looking at our friends, and I'm looking at this whole thing of Bellevue, and you got like people with just this idea that even Dave Ramsey said this, and I love Dave Ramsey, and my folks love him and stuff, and I love listening to his stuff. But I think one thing that I don't like is he says this. He says, you got to work on you so that then later you can help other people. Essentially, he kind of says that kind of thing, like, and not to directly call him out. Everybody who loves him, I love that dude. Right. I love him. He's great. He's fantastic. Yes. But I think that I've heard that said, and without the understanding that even in the meantime, as you're like trying to do whatever you're trying to do, you still are socially responsible. And you're still socially accountable to who you have around you. Because I can't be too busy. I can't afford to be too busy when 1 out of every 5 people, or the suicide rate is at 49,000. I can't afford to put it off. Oh my gosh. Going after my dreams. And that's more of a reality than my dreams are. Wow. My dream is first and foremost that my friends exist and live, and I get to share life with them. Wow. And so this idea of like me first, and then your suffering, and then your pain, and then my suffering, it has to be shifted. It has to be completely switched. Firstly, our suffering. Firstly, our pain. Firstly, your suffering. Firstly, your pain and your existence. And secondarily, my pursuits fiscally. You know what I mean? We submit that because we believe, obviously, that human beings have like the highest like degree of a value.
Yes.
A cosmic.
1,000%.
Yeah, cosmic price, God's own life paid for a human soul.
Yep.
And so each second of another person's life is worth us slowing down and giving everything for. And it directly goes against like this our idea of like, let me do me so that then I can help you later.
Exactly.
Goes against trusting God entirely.
100%.
It's just not trusting the Lord. It's like, dude, hey man, how small is your God to you? Like, because the last I checked, he can give to you as you obey him. He says, seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you.
Yep.
And when we really begin to like trust him in that, it looks radical. It does. You look insane. Like, you can speak to this all day in this season. It looks insane. I can speak to this all day in this season. But God really does work in mind-blowing, mysterious ways. Yes. And you're like, how did that work out? Oh, I literally just got back from the weekend, and I had been just spending some time in solitude and we went out to this desert, literally, like to this, like flats. And me and my buddy, there's a super cool area out in eastern Oregon that I didn't even know existed. And we're just out there on these salt flats, just spending time with one another and just dreaming and all that stuff, like I was saying. And we're just sitting and we're resting. And I get a call from like a company who like wants to work with me. And I'm a freelancer, so I'm prone to the whole orphan complex where you just eat everything that comes across your table, everything that you get offered to you. You're like, I just need to eat it. I just need to take the job. And I felt that same thing. They hit me up. They're like, hey, we need you here on Monday. And I was like, no, like I need to be here right now for this thing that I realize is my own health, my own mental, spiritual health.
Wow.
I need to rest. I need to stop. Like, and that means saying no, like a hard no right now. And I'm like, hey, I can't do it. And I'm like, well, there goes some work that I probably needed, but okay, I'll be fine. And sure enough, they hit me up again. They're like, hey, you know what? Actually, we need you Tuesday and Wednesday. And I literally just got done working yesterday, which is dope. And I was like, great, because that's the only window I have in my week.
No way.
The only window that I have to stuff anything in other than like the other responsibilities that I have. And I'm like, perfect. And it's just, everything just works. And it worked with a rhythm of grace and a rhythm of like listening to rest and Sabbath and like the desire to just pull back and not let this work define me.
Come on, man.
And if we're not too busy, we get stuck on this hamster wheel of like hedonic, constant work that just infiltrates and takes our entire life. And we never get there. And it's the essence of like, you look at the Tower of Babel, God looks at them, he's like, there's nothing they won't do. In other words, there's nothing that will stop these dudes from just ceasing and resting. And there's no height that they said that there was too high or high enough. They'll just keep going and killing themselves. In the Japanese way of, they'll basically just keep committing, karyoishi. You know what I mean? Humanity will be one big people suffering from karoishi. And he's like, you know what? F it. Confuses everybody, distributes them. It's just like, go away from each other. Like, stop doing this thing. And we, like we believe that that's how we get our languages and all that stuff. And he stirs the pot for our sake. Then you look at the Israelites in the desert, and they're wandering around the desert. All of a sudden after Egypt, and Egypt, you look at the Egyptian gods in Exodus, and Pharaoh is a god in the Egyptian mythology, obviously. And so he is saying, like, he's basically taking the throne of a god who's dominating over them. They're the God of the Old Testament versus the God of Pharaoh. And God just basically has this duel, and like you see he just schools him, gets him out of Israel. They cross through the sea. All this story is just like, whoa, holy smokes, like this is mind-blowing. But the most radical thing that I believe that God does in that entire narrative is the second that they get into the desert, he starts giving them a plan of how they keep going and how they get through the desert. And one of the biggest things that he gives them is Sabbath, is resting, is this idea of stopping. 6 days you work your butt off and you war against the world, which we're designed to do, like according to Genesis. We are designed to fight, like to have dominion, to rule and to reign. We're designed to like be like, this is not okay, this is unjust, this is wrong, like things need to change. I love this, and this is what is like true, and this is what is right, and this is what I'm like fighting to like pull from the earth and pull from like life to change the world for the better. And God's like, that's your responsibility. I designed you with that passion, but you got to stop and recognize at some point on day 7, I'm God. You're not. You know what I mean? And just chill, knowing that the world still keeps spinning without you and everything that you're doing. And it's like, just chill out, relax. And so God implements the Sabbath. He stops us on our insane track to work and death in working. And we're kind of getting back to that again, to that same work till we die and work to die, essentially, because it's become our defining value. When people ask, what do you do? First thing you say, oh, hey, I'm doing this right now for a job. That's not what you do. You're a husband first and foremost. You're a father first and foremost. You got passions and skills. You got a dope podcast. You got things that you're like super involved in. I do too. But we all define ourselves firstly in that question as what we work, how we work.
Our identity is our work.
Our work, yeah. And that's where we have similarities with everyone. It's where we all struggle, and it's where we all hustle and we all grind, and we were designed to. But we were designed to stop. And when you start to see, things like suicide and mental, like things that are just like, going on in all of our friends, I think a lot of it comes down to just this lack of stopping and knowing how to stop. And so like I basically all that to say is like I don't know, man, but I just feel like we are the ones who are accountable. I'm an extrovert, so I go out, I go sit and party hard, and I'm like a dog, dude. My tail's like wagging. You've seen me at weddings. I get down. I don't care if anyone else. I go hard. I just like, I love this. I'm like losing my marbles. Love it. It's just like a big turbine that's like, and then I'm just spinning on the floor, break dancing like a total white boy. Like an idiot.
As hard as you can.
Oh, so hard. And I love it. Case in point, last wedding we were at, I rolled my ankle so hard. I'm like laying there, miserable, huge swollen ankle, just like trying to stand back up and sitting back down. Just like, you're sitting with me, just like, dude, John, hey, bro, you okay? It's not all about dancing. I'm asking you the same question. Are we humans or are we dancers, dog? Like, I think we're just humans, not just only dancers. I think we're dancers. I think I'm a dancer, dog. Let me out there. And essentially a bull in a bullpen just trying to get out there and rage with my homies. And so I, in the heat of that, miss so much. Because in that same statistic with like people who are, dealing with mental struggles and mental wars, you have to start counting 5. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or another way of doing it is count 1, 2, 3, 4. Now one person's not here that should be here and is sitting alone in their house contemplating suicide, dealing with depression, and totally frozen by anxiety. So you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5th person who's not here, who's locked away right now, dealing with this stuff. And you start counting what you're not seeing. You start counting like the people who aren't there. You start seeing the person who should be, and you start like allowing your heart to break. And I think this is a hard thing because we like solutions, and we like
fixing everything.
Yeah, we're like, hey, dude, so John, give me the solve here. And come on, man, like, like everything else, you have social responsibility.
Right.
What we like, and this is our problem, and this is why I think there's a tension in the conversation that I'm having right now, is because I refuse to give an easy answer to this. I refuse to give just something that is just blanket answer to all this, because we are socially responsible for ourselves and for other people around us. And what I might give is like a quick answer, and then is like implemented, is really just like only like a small part of the problem anyways. Right. And it's so dynamic, and so I'm not gonna like act like I know what's going on.
Right.
But I think a lot of it is that we want relationships that are Velcro relationships. Mm-hmm. That we want to basically just be able to apply and reapply, apply, reapply, commit and really not commit. And just kind of be like, nah, but if I want to recommit, I can. And it's like...
when it suits me, when it's comfortable, when it works.
Nobody's cementing themselves to one another.
It's too awkward, it's too vulnerable.
Oh, it's so hard. Yeah, it's super difficult because people are dramatic.
Yes.
Drama's everywhere, and it's like a part of people, and you're like, I don't need this inconvenience in my life. Like, I've got things to do.
Right.
I've got a job I need to do. I've got goals and ambitions. I gotta look a certain way. I gotta have a certain type of people who are super smart and brilliant, and essentially just walking Jesus Christ like around me at all times. Right. Yeah, I essentially want. That's the way he lives. Yeah, with his 12 top of the top, best of the best people he has around him. We know that.
The most broken.
Yeah, right. He's like, I came for the sick people. We have to come for the sick people. We have to come for the people like ourselves, where we recognize, hey, I'm accountable to you. Mm-hmm. You're accountable to me. I'm not going anywhere in your life. Mm-hmm. I've committed myself to you. Mm-hmm. When you look at the early church in Acts 2, I think it's one of the most beautiful stories ever. You see people that are gathered in one place after Jesus is left. Yep. It's estimated that, oh my gosh, this is such a dope thing. So in 80 AD, there's about 1,000 Christians. Fast forward to 350 AD, only a couple hundred years later, there's 30 million, 57% of the known population at the time.
Holy crap.
Is Christian now. Yeah. Only a few hundred years. It is, I mean, obviously, like a lot of people disagree with the Christian faith and all that stuff, but you have to look at it and be like, okay, this is probably the most sociological, like, huge movements that there has ever been in existence. Yep. Like the complete shift from paganism as being like literally now like obsolete. When did it happen? Right there. That's literally upon Christ's death, everything shifts. And then the political sphere changes entirely as a result of it. Like, I'm trying to figure out what I should say and what I shouldn't say. Yeah. But it's just awesome. So you have to look at this like, and you have to be like, okay, where did that start? Because that's a true historical thing that happened. Yep. And you have to at least just on a socio, perspective, like just look back at the original like start of it. And you're like, okay, well, it starts with a couple dudes in Pentecost where, it says the Holy Spirit comes down. Yep. These dudes essentially come out on the streets and they've just seen fire and power and glory and come down on top of them. And you're like, whoa, that's crazy. And these guys are like apparently appear drunk. And then Peter like turns to them and he's like, it's not as you suppose. Like these men have just encountered God. Wow. And he's like, this is crazy. And you know what they do that blows my mind more than any of that? Rather than doing what everyone does, where they would be like, we just saw fire, power, glory, on this incredible scale. Now let's make a seminar. Let's put it out like
10 points on how to do this.
Yeah, dude. Oh, let's make a seminar. Let's get these people on podcasts. You know what I mean? Let's put some books out. Let's duplicate. Let's get a couple conventions going. Let's get this out to the whole world. You know what they do? They do the opposite. They go into the trenches of one another's houses. Yep. And they start living this. They take that power and they move into community. Yes. Communities. And Jesus says this before any of that even starts. He says, by this they will know that you are my disciples, by your love for one another.
Come on, man.
And so they move into this community. It says, I think, I don't know the exact verse, but it says they dedicated themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer, and to fasting daily. Every single day. And then it says that they started like selling off everything to pay for one another's needs. Yeah. And you're like, just to help them, like just to be like, oh yeah, don't worry, my needs are met. Like they actually had to put a stop on this. And like you look at old manuscripts from like that time, and they had to issue like mandates from being like, hey, you've given too much, you're starving now. So please stop giving so much because you are legit starving. A lot of this sounds like communism, but communism is obviously when a force is coming in and saying, you must do this. Right. This is what we see that's called communalism, where we see people that are like just stoked out of their mind to like just dump and lavish on one another and be like, yo, dude, I love you so much, man. And so obviously it's like, hey, I'd like my college tuition paid for. I think I'll join you guys. And, but then they start moving into each other's houses. And church looked a lot more like around a table. The breaking of bread literally meant they would go from house to house and they would eat bread. And then we would be like conversing across a table. So these people would walk into the modern church that is like one person seemingly talking on stage with a huge conglomerate of thousands to like a couple hundred or just 50 people sitting around not participating relatively, and be like, what the heck is going on? Like, this is bizarre. Like, this is really weird. Wait, how often do you guys meet? We meet like an hour and a half, and that's pushing it hard, Right. It's like a week. And people are like, hold up, a week? Right. This was like our everyday, like our bread and butter. We work together, we live together, we commune together, we eat together, we do everything together for the betterment of one another. Why? And based on what? Based on the love that we've received from Jesus. Yep. 100%. And you're like, that's radical. And so we've moved really far away from this early depiction, and you could talk forever about that. But I believe that in its essence is the best battle that we can wage against these things, is available space. Like creating holes in our life, recognizing we are socially responsible for one another. Like when we see people, are we actually being active in our like invitation? Are we being like, dude, man, let's hang out sometime? Right. Okay, when? Oh, let me get back to you, dude. I'm just, I gotta get you on the schedule. Right. Don't worry, bro. I will get back to you. No, have a actual space in your week that is like, no, legit, come here. I'm here every time. Yes. I'm available. I exist for you. I create space. Because what that does, they say, like, there's a lot of wiser people than me that say, like, teachers learn twice. So if you think you're a teacher, you'll quickly realize you're not. But even if you do, like, just show up because you'll learn double. Hey, what the heck, Yes. And then at the end of the day, you're probably saving some people's lives, which is pretty great too.
Yeah, and you have no clue what conversation could do and impact someone's life.
Yeah, straight up. Yeah.
One thing you said, one thing I wanted to say about all this, I feel like, is this is all grand and good, but unless you have a place where this love is pouring into your life,
come on, yes,
none of this can happen.
None of it is feasible because the world wants this. Yeah, and it looks cultish all of a sudden because 100%. There isn't a real source, like a genuine source. Yep. And I've said it like this in the past. I think there's like a triangle, and there's like 3 tiers that we've gotten it completely wrong. Firstly, what we do, our usual approach, and you've got a lot of self-help books, and you've got a lot of like, hey, like focus on iPhone, me, individualist culture that's like, hey, look, like, man, in order to help you, I need to help me. Right. I need to get healthy mentally, which I'm like, okay, I get that. Like, that seems like the natural approach to things. You're going to work on yourself so that then you can be a good part of helping community. Sure. And then lastly, God's doing fine without me. Like, he's fine. Like, he doesn't need attention. Like, come on, my friends do. I can't help my friends without helping me. Yeah. God shifts that entire paradigm on his head, and he says, firstly, I am your source. Yes. With all, he gives us just 2 clear commandments. He's like, hey, love me with all your soul, with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your strength. Yep. And you're like, okay, that's okay, if you say so, I will love you. And out of that, God says, by this you know love, that Christ first loved you.
Yes.
And laid his self down for you. So we understand our identity only as we understand the person who gives us being, who is our designer.
Right.
And we have to submit that obviously as Christians because we believe that he's the one who made us. And so therefore we submit ourselves to the understanding that he is our identity because he is our designer. He's the one who gives us our being, who takes the formless void of time and space and creates something formless out of it. Our very existence is worship to him. It's recognition of him. And so we submit ourselves and we go back to him of being like, yo, who you are and who you say that I am is who I am. And I submit that to you. So when I'm having a bad day, first and foremost, God is worthy of all the praise.
Yes.
Because he's consistent. And he's consistently good and he's consistently faithful while everything else is inconsistent and everything else is inevitably not good.
Right.
It deteriorates and it falls apart without him. So I look at the one rock that I have, the one stable thing that doesn't change. And I look at his definition of himself and I submit myself to it. And then his definition of me, which I don't often like because he says, I am loved, I am chosen, and I am actually good enough, you know? And then he's like, yeah, no, you are those things. And I'm like, all right, I submit to you because you're God of the known universe. Yeah. And then he's like, okay. And then he gives us his second commandment, right? So after you first worshiped him and praised him for all that he is, he starts to, ironically, like you'll get in a worship sphere. It's really funny. We'll be worshiping God and be like, this is for God. And then it's so ironic because the direct opposite happens. We walk out with confidence and just being like, amazing. God is so good.
Yes.
And all this burden of like who you are and your deficiency and all that stuff is just dwarfed by his magnitude and his magnificence. And you're like, he's so good. He loves us so much. Yeah. And then we walk away from that and we walk away like, often we do a worship night every other week. Right. We have it tonight. Tonight's, it's going to be great, dude.
No way.
Yeah. And so and everybody says that. They're like, I just walk away full. And and that's where community begins. It's firstly the worship of God. And then we learn his perspective of one another. You start worshiping God, you're like, you're so good. And he's like, I love you. I love you so much. And you're like, God, please, it's about you, not me. Right. You know, please, Lord. But okay, keep going. And then he's like, dude, by the way, have you noticed so-and-so's not here? Hey, man, have you noticed? So-and-so seems like when they said that, they seem like they're going through a lot. You should go check on them. And they start doing that to you too. And they start genuinely caring about you. Not because you said so, and you said you should, and you should have already all over people. You should all over people.
Right. Yes.
You know?
So true.
You just genuinely introduce them to a God who is conviction in himself.
Yeah.
And he convicts you to love your neighbor as yourself. So the sphere changes, or the triangle shifts entirely, and it becomes firstly God, community, lastly me. Because God is our source. He's everything. And then people, man, people. He'll always turn your eyes to the things that are breaking his heart. And that's his people, his children, or whoever is out in the world that is hurting. He loves them. His desire is that all men would come to him. Why? Not because he's a manipulative God. He didn't just come to like fix our sins, which most people just highlight. They're like, your sins are saved. You're like, no, dude.
You can get to heaven now. Do what you want.
The radical news of the gospel is that there is hope for our day to day. And an example to live by that just radically changes every single like crack in every area of our whole life. You know? It's just awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's hope in every single way. And that's it. God didn't just come to save sinners. No. He didn't. That was like, it's a byproduct. Right. It's like a part of it. Yes, yes. Which is awesome. Shows his heart that he's like, no, that's not going to separate us. That small thing, man, the thing you did, please, come on.
It means nothing. I put my value on you. No one can change it.
Yeah.
Not even you.
Exactly. Yeah, man.
That's crazy.
It is, and it should dumbfound us, you know? But I feel like so much of this is just our innate pain and our innate desire just to prove our existence.
Yes, of
and
course.
make it worthy. And you get in the presence of God, and He's just like, "Oh, you want that? Here it is." And you're like, "Well, but I gotta do a lot. I gotta be a lot of things."
Yeah.
And He's like, "No. You don't.
no.
Here you go.
Yeah.
That's what you want at the end. Here you go.
Right.
What you're fighting for in your job, and what you're trying to get a big house for, and all that stuff. Just recognition, affection, intimacy.
Yeah.
Oh, here you go.
Wow.
Now what?"
Right.
And you're like, "Well, now I'm fulfilled. Like, I got what I wanted, and it's better than I could have ever deserved. It's more than I ever wanted.
Yep.
All right, now I guess I got to look around and be like, who else is here now? Like, who else do I have?"
Yes.
And that changes community, and that builds community. Christ at the center is the culture of everything. In the end, we fight with the dynamics of like ethics all day long.
Of course.
As a source, like being like, okay, this can't be a mere opinion. We've talked about, me and you have talked about this like extensively. C.S. Lewis has his book Mere Christianity, which is just awesome, big exposition on this, where he's basically just like saying like, dude, you and me are just walking opinions until we come into something that is a moral compass and a standard.
Yes.
Because you can be like, "Hey, that's wrong," and they're like, "Yes, says who?"
Exactly.
You, me, I say that, and I matter. Well, why do you say that you matter? Why do you say that your opinion matters, or that anything that you said has meaning more than just a small opinion?
Right.
Or these things that are right, like justice, without it having a backdrop of an opinion that is superior to ours, it means nothing more than just a popular opinion. That's all we're going based off of. What you have people who are constantly being bombarded by popular opinion that's different than their own all the time. And that just creates radicals.
Yeah,
and
that's the world we live in now.
Yeah, and instead of like listening to one another, we just create like polar ends of things, as opposed to what God does is He comes and He's like, "Hey, you're over here, you're over here. Come on, guys. Come on. I love you both.
Right.
I love you. Now, come on, meet your neighbor, love your enemy." And He draws these people to Him. And as He draws them to them, enemies here and enemies here are drawn to Him, and they come closer together. And that's proximity change. And after a while, we are looking at like this problem of like ethics, and we actually have a backboard to be like, okay, God says this, the creator of the universe, the definer of good and wrong, that is all holy and all good. He's the one who can alone like tell us if in fact He exists, right? He would be the one who could actually tell us what is right and wrong, right? And so if it is Him, which that's another debate for another time, or that's a huge debate. If you want to like look those things, look up Ravi Zacharias. Awesome dude. But anyways, and then we start to actually have communion that doesn't look like really just like networking.
Right.
You know,
and we start to get something from someone.
Community that is surrounded around like servitude and giving and dying to oneself. That's actually like what we're talking about. That's practical. That's actually like, no, I do this because I was first loved. I recognize the dude who is my source, and it's not you. It's not this community, but He calls me to community. He calls me to social awareness.
Yes.
He calls me to like looking for who's not here. You know, and so as Christians, this is really our first and foremost like thing. But the problem is we're not getting into the Word enough, man. Like I've been trying to devour the Bible lately. Thankfully, I need it probably more than anybody else. Thankfully,
Same.
I'm like straight up, dude. I'm the worst. Like I need this book more than you do. I'll be up all night reading it. I was
like
up all night reading it, dude. Yeah, I wish I could just. I feel like I read one section. I read 2 verses and it takes me like 6 hours because I'm just like, oh, wow. This is humongous implications, like absolutely massive.
Yep.
Really exciting implications.
Well, and I feel like the challenge is, because I grew up like talking about all this stuff or being in church or whatever, and that's wonderful and amazing, and like have a relationship with Jesus. But until I come, like it's like John is amazing. I can talk about John for the rest of my life. But until I sit down with you and I spend years of my life knowing you, and you knowing me, and me understanding who you are, that's the only way any of this is going to work. And that to me was, after being a Christian for 33 years, It wasn't until about a year ago. It was
Wow.
like, wait a minute, what?
Wow.
Like you actually are 100% everything, practically, physically, like everything. You're all there.
Yeah.
And you're waiting for me to get out. Like I have control as a joke. The idea that we have some control, I don't see it anywhere in the Bible. Be a Christian and have control of your life.
Yeah.
It's lay down your life. Just give what I tell you to give. But until actually spending time and getting to know, because you can read the Bible all day long you want.
True that.
But unless you have a relationship and the Holy Spirit then makes this thing come alive to you, it's just a book.
It's just a book.
I've spent a lot of time just reading and being like, cool, that meant nothing to me.
Yep.
And then he can so to me it's that dynamic. And other than just spending time with him and letting him do what he does, because my human nature is like, okay, I'm a doer. I'm going to go do all this stuff. God, look, I read 15 chapters. Aren't you so proud of me? He's like, yeah, I want you to read this one thing. And then I just want to I want to give to you. Like Abraham is the best example. He was made right because he did nothing.
Dude.
It was because he believed.
Yes.
And then God was like, boom, here you go. And the crazy thing about that, I was reading that the other day, was like, God chose to bless him. Then Abraham was made, God chose everything first. He piles on all the stuff, like, Abraham, will you do this? He's like, okay, I'll believe you, God. It wasn't like he did all, look at his amazing reputation, he did all these amazing things. God is like, check out Abraham. It was like, no, it has nothing to do with you. I choose you, I bless you, then are you willing to step into what I have for you?
Yes.
But I feel like if that doesn't exist, at least for me,
Yeah, straight up.
then I will spend the rest of my life doing good things, having good conversations, loving people from a place of my ability, which is garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Change.
Yeah. And obviously, he would look at the sin of the affair
Of
and be
course.
like, yo, dude, that's harming you and obviously harming your wife and
Yes.
harming every other structure that
100%.
I love of people in your life.
Right.
Which is why God is like, yo, that's sin. We think
Yes.
of sin as God being putting rules and regulations on us
Right.
when it is just love. He's like, yo, I didn't design you for that. You
Right.
will break down over given enough time doing that.
Yes.
Inevitably, you will fall apart if you keep
100%.
doing that. Because he loves us, because he
Yeah.
designed us, and I submit myself to that.
Right.
I love what you were just saying, because it comes down to servant, minded, enemy love at the end of the day.
Yep.
That's what makes us so radical, or that's what should make us so radical to the rest of the world, is really at the end of the day, we're not surrounding ourselves with role models or senseis or mentors or people who are fantastic, which we should have mentors and we should have role models and all that stuff. But if you're doing that selectively, if you're selecting your peers, then you're not following the same idea of enemy love, and you're selecting people, and you're also, by selecting people, you're pushing other people away at the same time. I had some old person who was like, yo, hey man, I'd love to be your mentor in your life. He's like, I want to have be really, we use words like this, intentional about who I use in my life. I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry, I have to stop you right there.
Yeah.
I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
I'm not who you're looking for. Because at the end of the day, other people need you more than I do right now. That's not saying I'm self-righteous, but I'm just saying we don't follow the same vision, because I am blessed to run into anyone and to have anyone with me, period. I am lesser. Paul does this insane thing. You know why he takes the name Paul instead of Saul? It's not because God says it. It's literally because he has a dual name. He has both Paul and Saul as a Roman citizen, as part Roman and as part Jewish. And so he legitimately takes the name, he goes from Saul, which means something. I can't remember what it means. But Paul is radical because Paul means lesser than you. Lesser than you. He takes the name that says his identity. He's like, yeah, I'll take that name. And he shifts. You see him shift because he's trying to be all things to all men. He's trying to be impactful. He's trying to be a part of other people's lives and their community. And he's blessed by anyone that God brings. And so we have to lose this idea, dude, of I got to have the right people around me. Man, you don't understand the value of humanity or people that you have around you, and you're too stuck in your ways to figure that out. In Portland, man, I was like, bro, I still am, big stuck up prick. Like, dude, I remember I got to live in this big house with like it was literally a mansion. It was called the Lambert House. It was this old mansion from like the 1960s, and I lived with like 16 people. It was co-ed, a lot of Christians. It was awesome house. I got super blessed by it in like a terrible season of life. And I remember initially moving in there, all these awesome people. I was like, dude, this is dope. I love this community. Oh, man, these people are going to make me better. These people are going to keep improving me and sharpening me and all that stuff. And there was this one guy that I'd met at church. I'll say his name because me and him have open conversations about this, but his name's Alistair. Alistair, I love you. I remember he was at church, and I'm sitting with him at a group in church and stuff, and I remember always thinking, man, Alistair's here. He's in my group. Holy smokes, are you serious? And this guy would just like talk, and I was just looked at him, and I was like, man, you kind of like, you got terrible fashion. You kind of, I just am judging this dude super hard. And I was just always like, frick, man. It's just honestly like a waste of my time. I thought that. I remember I'm sitting at my house with my 16 people, and a lot of people are moving out, and all of a sudden Alistair moves in. I'm like, what the hell is this dude doing in my house, man? This is my sanctuary.
Wow.
And I'm like I'm like on my computer screen, I'm just like, well, he's gonna leave. And they're like, one of the girls there, she's like, hey, here's the thing, Alistair's gonna move in. And I was like, what the and I'm like, no. This place, I'm like thinking like in Portlandia, this place is over. She's ruined. This used to be such a dope spot, and now it's totally ruined by freaking Alistair. And I'm like looking at all my friends like, is anyone else seeing this? What? Are we all cool with this? And everybody's like, yeah, man, what an awesome dude. And I'm like, okay, yeah, awesome. Yeah, I guess we're just like taking in anybody. And this is legitimately, like, I'm not dramatizing this. This is actually how bad my attitude was. So I understand where people are coming from. Wow. But months later, man, I remember we used to have these testimonial nights at our house. We'd have these big communal dinners. We'd have like people over and we all eat and stuff. And then I remember one time this dude just gets up and he shares his story, and it made me weep. And it made me like, oh my God, this man's a hero. Like the things that he lived through and he made it through and he survived through, and the mental illness and the suffering that he had been in, like his story was mind-blowing to me. And I remember just sitting there being like, man, this guy's crazy. And all of a sudden, my thoughts of him had gone to affection. Like legitimately affection and then fandom. And it just shifted in that listening to him. Wow. And then later on, I remember I was at church with another guy, and somebody just started talking smack about him. And they were like, oh, Alistair. And I think they were even joking. And I got red hot pissed. I was like, yo, you don't know who you're talking about. Like, this guy's legit. He's more legit than you. And I start like just getting like pissed, man, so mad. And then I just catch myself like as I'm saying this stuff, and I'm like, oh, my bad. Like, sorry about hurting you too. Sorry about blowing holes through you. But this was crazy because I was just like done with this dude. Wow. And God's like, yeah, hey man, like you judge people pretty freaking hard. And really, like, I've blessed you by humbling you with the people that are around you that also show you their story and my faithfulness in their story. And it doesn't look like the classic example, but if you listen, if you sit and you stop talking and you stop trying to like treat people like you're some kind of like teacher and brilliant guy, and you start listening and being like, yo, hey, what's your story? And what does God want to teach me through you? And I'm not going to judge you based off your appearance or whatever you may be based on like a superficial scale. Like, I'm going to judge you based off of the Lord and his like opinion of you, which he calls you his beloved, and he calls you his son and his daughter, and that makes us family. So I choose you and you choose me, and because we're stuck together. That's all there is. At the end of the day, I'm stuck with you. I don't have to like you. You don't have to like me necessarily, but I love you. I have to love you. Yeah. It's crazy, man. You don't have to like. You gotta love them. You
Right.
have to love them.
Right, you're commanded to.
Yeah, you're commanded to.
That's insane.
Yeah, you have to love them. And I see the image of God in them. I see that they are a son and daughter of God. And I am so blessed and fortunate to be around anybody. Praise God for this person's existence. But the only way that happens is commitment. You know, the word that we go back to in Acts 2 is they dedicated themselves. Dedicated. At the end of the day, our commitment levels are so all over the place.
Don't exist mostly.
They're situational, they're seasonal. Yeah. Most of the time, anybody who's committed to somebody is a stalker.
Right.
Or kind of creepy.
Right.
You're kind of, or a cult, right? And you're kind of like, I don't know. And so our modern examples of commitment are so broken. Of covenant with one another.
Right.
And so you get a lot of like islands. All islands. We used to be like
we're segregated.
and we're like islands of people who are just taking our boats over to one another's house and then going back home. Where we should be like, hey, let's build community, let's build cul-de-sacs, let's build neighborhoods, let's change the marketplace, like let's make this more communal, like closer proximity. And so you see that's what the early church does. They move closer to each other and more constant, and they dedicate themselves to loving God with everything, and they dedicate themselves to loving their community with everything, and serving them in like enemy love, day in and day out, every single day, with every resource and everything available to them.
Wow.
Radical, dude. Awesome stuff. And then, but I think with given enough, like what we've run into in this area is we have such an excess of prosperity. Like, oh my gosh, we're doing fantastic. And a person begins to ask themselves the really frustrating question of, I have so much, so why am I not happy? Which is really the wrong question, because yeah, you have so much. But here, the real question is, I have so much. Is any of this making me happy? And I would argue probably not.
No.
Probably not, because why do you have all this stuff? Well, I got a car because I want people to see my car and then see me in my car and then love me and appreciate me and adore me, so that I can then move into affection and then hopefully someday move into intimacy with that person.
Right.
I want a girl to love me. If I got to get a car to do it, I'll do it. Right. Oh, I want a patio. Like a patio so that I can look at a huge view and all that stuff, so that I can then gather my friends around a fireplace on the patio and look at a view, and then have an excuse to be like, hey, so by the way, how is everybody? Right. Hey, I'm really lonely. I'm totally lost. Like, would you guys just like to hang out? It's like, dude, at the end, what you're looking for is community. What you're looking for is proximity in all these huge pursuits. And God just says, here it is. Here's me. Here's community. Here's the church. Here's fellowship. Like, there you go. Boom. Yep. Like, now what?
Right.
And of course they go back to investing more into the things that matter and less into the other things. And of course it looks ridiculous and radical. And of course it looks socially responsible. But what we have now is totally different, man. We have these things that are making us so prosperous. Like, I mean, like, look at it's so interesting. You look at the dynamic of just like, I don't know, grocery stores. Like grocery stores where you're like, dude, go down to the grocery store. I used to have to go to the grocery store with my mom. My mom would take like 5 moons to talk to this other lady that we ran into. And I remember being a kid just like, oh my God, and just smashing my face against the cart out of boredom. I remember laying on the floor literally being like, oh my God, I'm dead. I'm literally dead right now. Like, and I'm not even being dramatic. Like, just let me die, God. I'm in the desert. This is the wilderness of my soul in aisle 5. Yeah, let me perish, God. Just put me out of my misery. Take me now to heaven. And it's just like, dude, I was 5 years old being like, and my mom is just communing with this lady. And she's like, I don't care. We're here. I can't believe I ran into you. This is incredible.
Wow.
But now, like, the grocery store doesn't exist anymore. It's all online. So because of prosperity, now we don't even have to roll out of bed. We can have like Amazon Fresh or Instacart or whatever it may be, like deliver it straight to your door, and you just hop out of bed in a bedrobe. You maybe even wave at the guy in the truck who's just like, I don't care who you are. I'm seeing like 1 trillion people today. And you're like, hey, community right here. How you doing? And he's like, okay, see you later. And you're like, dang, that was some good community. Grab your groceries and you put it in your fridge and you go back on your couch and then you click on your Netflix. Which it used to be renting a movie, you had to get out in your PJs, maybe, and you're like, got your hood on, you're like, okay, nobody see me. But somebody's going to see you at Blockbuster. Somebody's going to see you at Hollywood Video. Yeah, and you're like, oh, okay, hey man, how you doing? You have a little bit of social responsibility. But now, you can just click on Netflix. Bro, I was reading this the other day, by the way. Netflix has 3.5 years of content on it.
3.5 years?
3.5 years worth of video just constantly playing through. So you could sit on your couch right now for 3.5 years. And then get this, Amazon Prime just announced that they have 4 times the content on their streaming platform now than Netflix.
Oh my gosh.
So whatever that is, so at least you're sitting for a decade just not doing anything. So the world around you, the system in place that we have, it just enforces no social accountability, no social, like, I don't know, like whatever you need to like get out there and like actually talk to people. The systems are making things worse. And then you got things like sex. Sex used to be just go have sex with a human being. Now there's a gaping hole in our intimacy. And so we're like, okay, you know what? Like, I'll just get on this sex app or this Tinder app or whatever, and you can statistically have sex in 30 minutes, only a few miles away from you. Not to put any like thing in anybody's mind, but you can have sex with a stranger in 30 minutes statistically. I'm like, well, that's wild. But then there's also porn. And the internet is made of like what? Like they say 70% of the internet is just pure porn. If that doesn't show you our consumption rate of porn, it's insane. And then you got like things like as simple as like walking your dog. You used to walk your dog down the road, and me and my mom were just walking our dog, and I run into some neighbors. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And we just talking to some strangers. They're like, you're walking your dog, I'm walking my dog. Like hanging out at a dog park. It's pooping, and my dog's pooping too. And it's kind of awkward, but I guess I'll talk to you. Hey, how you doing? You know, you just talk to people. Now you can pay people on WAG to. You never have to get out of your bed. You don't even have to like ever walk your dog. You can just be like, hey, walk my dog for me. Later, here's a bunch of money because I'm so prosperous. And then you even look at parenting, bro. You can avoid parenting nowadays. You can straight up buy endless amounts of nannies. Hire them and hire tutors for the rest of your kid's life. I've seen it done. It's an epidemic around here. My friends are nannies, and they're like, hey, here's the thing. Like, I get paid to be a parent all day 100%. Long. Without like, the basically being able to do anything that like really disciplines the kid and like lets them know like, hey, that's right and that's wrong. And so basically what this shows us is that we have been able to avoid all social responsibility because of our prosperity. Given enough prosperity, you can avoid nowadays all your social responsibility. And this is horrible. This is horrible when we start to look at loneliness. Yeah, we start to look at loneliness, and how the heck do we, without social responsibility, loneliness goes forever. And so people go back to the same coping mechanism that is making them more socially irresponsible. So it's more Netflix, it's more porn, and it's more shopping. And that's our society right now. It's just porn, Netflix, and shopping. It's consuming until you're like filling a void that can't be filled by consuming and eating. The Bible talks about how it's better to give than it is to receive. We are not meant to be consumers. We are meant to be this crazy conduit that is just God in us flowing out to people, to the hurting world around us. And that requires a certain degree of responsibility socially. And so it's crazy because one of the wild things about this is we all are lonely to some regard. We all have deficiencies on the day-to-day. And I think, like, if we took, for instance, one of the studies they've done on, like, guys in the military, they've looked at, like, vets and stuff, and they've been like, yo, that was your best friend. Like, why? and they're like, well, we went through boot camp together, and they study the breakdown of like, why does a person bond himself to another individual in like the heat of war, in the heat of, like, you got these dudes who are like best friends for life.
Oh, 100%.
And because of mutual suffering and mutual pain together. And they look at guys, like, one of the most like combined things about us is like going out into nature. We hike up huge mountains. We're suffering the entire way up.
Yes.
We're thousands of feet higher than humans were meant to live. I'm over at Everest with Ben and Joe, and we're like, dude, this is literally the cruising altitude of a Boeing 747. People are not made to cruise at this altitude. We are dying. We're like running up like in the Himalayas, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm literally dying right now. Like, we're looking at each other. This is nuts. But we're smiling the whole time.
Yeah,
we're just like, this is the best. You're hurting? I'm hurting. Yeah. We're at the gym. We're like, come on, one more. It hurts. It's breaking your muscles. It's literally ripping them apart.
Yes.
Awesome. And you're like, why? Because we gather around mutual suffering.
Yep.
We gather around mutual pain. In the same way that moms gather whole groups around bratty kids.
Yep.
Or stupid husbands. And they're like, oh gosh, this kid, like my kid or whatever, my husband's done saying some stupid things, you know what I mean? And we do the same thing with our wives and girlfriends and all that kind of stuff, where we're like, oh my, can you believe that? Can you believe that? And I said, I mean, we gather around like, like teachers in school. And our hatred for teachers and our hatred for the tests that they give us. Mutual suffering. It's like a gathering point for all of us.
Yep.
And yet everything in our life is preaching, hey, man, avoid suffering at all costs.
Yep.
And you go back into your cave, lick your wounds, and come back when you're all better.
Right, when you're all polished.
And the lie of that, when you're all polished. And the lie of that, bro, is that everybody is being told on a one-dimensional scale, on an individual scale, you're alone in this. Nobody understands, and no one cares.
Yep.
What? No.
Right.
So many understand. Because what we realize when we get out into our communities, holy smokes, you're going through that too.
Right. Oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
Yeah, and it's the bonding agent to our relationship. Yep. It's like, oh my gosh, dude.
Yes.
You know, dude,
it's like watching each
that
other bleed.
Sucks. Yeah, I sit at coffee shops a lot and do work. And the amount of people that I just sit all day that are just like, and she did this. Oh, she did what? And obviously that's gossiping and slanderous, and that's only destructive to you in the long haul.
Right.
But it's a mutual pain that people gather around.
Yep.
Now, if we have pain that we can now turn for good, because in essence, pain is neutral. When people say pain is gain, I don't agree with that statement. Pain is pain. Right. It's a neutral thing. It happens to you no matter what. Thankfully, pain exists, because if pain didn't exist, neither did the joy of survival.
Right.
Neither would the joy of making it and not being like completely obliterated when you like huck yourself off a cliff snowboarding,
right,
and you
right.
finally land it. You'd be like, yeah, but it's pretty much the same as not landing it. Whatever. You know, pain is a thing. It's a thing. It's neutral. It exists. Suffering is like truly horrible, and that's all alone. And we experience that alone, but it's just pain. But pain has the ability to bond us, to come between us and be like, hey, you have this too? Oh my gosh.
Right.
But we've run from pain our entire lives, and we haven't allowed God to be in it and be like, hey, do you see your neighbor over there? And so our worship is weak because we come and we're like, oh God, could you just fix me first? It's like, no, dude, stop looking at yourself first and foremostly. Look at who I am and the goodness of me and the hope that is in me. And now you see your pain, and God is like, hey, you see so-and-so? They suffer with that same thing too. And of course I want to like free you from your suffering, but why not free them as well? Why not go to them and be a part of their life as well? But if you're not around people, that will never be clear. It's never going to be crystal clear for you. It takes consistency and it takes dedication over a long period, a lifetime. I plan on staying with my community, planted my entire life.
Right.
Because there are things that are going to happen in 50 years that I want to be a part of. You keep going with the same pace that we've been going at, bro. Holy smokes, God is awesome, and this community is incredible. And it only happens because we've dedicated. We have linked arms, and we're like, I'm not going anywhere. If you go anywhere, I'll chase you. I will drive all the way across the country. I will chase you. I will chase you because you're my family at the end of the day.
Well, and the thing that I want to go back to what I said earlier because it's the same thing.
Please. Yeah.
But all of this is with nothing unless you have you have to have the relationship. Even like what you're just saying about going and finding people. You can find people all day long, and you guys can get together and link arms. And I can go link arms and start groups. They're worthless unless you have something pouring into you.
Yes.
Like,
come on.
Otherwise, this last 2 hours is completely wasted.
Yeah.
But it's not wasted because I have the ultimate person pouring into me.
Yeah.
I am set up to fail. By design I fail. So that I have a desperate need for one person, Jesus, who fills it.
Come on. Yeah.
That it doesn't. So when I get to come to God and go, God, I really screwed up. He says, yeah, but guess what? This is who you are. Cool. Just like I was saying about like I can have all these affairs. Eventually, a human, when they come into contact with the person of love, you cripple.
Yeah.
You're done. Because there is nothing better than it. And what happens is you start to see how sad and how much it's not even a comparison.
Yeah.
No matter what sin, no matter what thing, it's like, wow, I used to think that was something. This is everything. But until that it becomes revelation, that's where I feel like that's why I've seen people try to do all of these things, attempt all of these groups, attempt all of these little things. They're wonderful. But unless you have someone, Jesus, pouring into you on a daily, telling you who you are, defining all of these things, all of it is a waste.
It will dive bomb.
Every time.
Yeah, it will absolutely crash and burn because all you're running off of is passion.
Yeah, and you fail because you're designed to fail.
Yeah, and the only thing that will sustain you is other people's consistency, which they are not.
Oh my
Your
gosh.
community's consistency, which
it
is not. Yeah, of course. People are going to hurt you like crazy because nothing in their lives is consistent either.
Exactly.
Wake up. It's like everybody's not consistent because nothing's consistent. Right. Our weather just changed. Our very weather patterns throw you off.
Yep.
We all get sick.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But the biggest lie is this idea of independence.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, where do we get off, bro? Thinking that we are in any way I know independent organisms. They are not human beings. They're bugs, man. A bug is more independent than you.
And they still need colonies.
Yeah, and they straight up need economies. A mosquito hatches, and he's like, okay, I know what I was made for. And he just starts biting everything and sucking blood. And he's like, I got a minute. I better make this count.
24 hours a day.
Exactly. And they're like, well, I'm independent. Yeah, totally. Right. I'm not independent. It takes me 10 to 18 years to get out of my parents' house, upon birth. To go out into the real world and become my own individual takes 18 years. Who are we kidding? We are not created independently. No. We are created interdependently. Yes. We are created needing desperately one another, not in perfection because we're not perfect. They're not perfect. Right. But we look at God and we say, okay, God, how do you see this thing? Because how you see it is probably the accurate way of seeing it. I'm all over the place. My mental state is all over the place, but I just submit myself to you.
Yes.
And what do you think of these people? And he'll tell you everything you don't want to hear all the time. He'll be like, they're kind of the best. They're kind of perfect. They're so loved. I have so much grace for them. Yeah. You should have grace for them because I have crazy amounts of grace for you and crazy amounts of forgiveness for you and love for you. And they hurt you really, really bad. Last I checked, I was on that tree too. And they put nails through my hands. And I said to them, man, they just don't know what they're doing. Forgive them because they know not what they do. And we have to look at our community and be like, you just don't know what you're doing. It's okay. You're just hurting.
1,000%.
You're hurting. You hurt me. That's okay. But last I checked, there's this saying going around that says, hurt people, right? I'm like, true. But last I checked, hurt people also save hurt people. Hurt people also are the ones who understand hurt people enough to effectively help hurt people.
Right. And not let that hurt define them.
Yeah. And you're like, I am equipped because I am also hurt.
Right. I share this pain.
Yeah, you hurt, I hurt, we all hurt. And
Yes.
that's common.
Right.
We
And I can show you who
that.
doesn't hurt and can help you not. It can help you stop hurting.
Oh, yeah. And that's our bonding agent. That's the
Yes.
thing that we gather around. It's like
Yep.
we gather around him, we're drawn to him around a table, and then he defines the culture and the atmosphere around the table. He changes everything.
Yes.
And so that we are counting people who are not there. We're seeing friends who otherwise we'd be too caught up in our own narrative and our own story to ever even think about because we're hurting too bad. He gives us hope to be more than we are, not in a way that it's just like self-promoting and progressing in the same way, but in a way that gives us grace and says, hey, let me take off that burden so you don't work yourself to death.
Right.
Live in freedom and grace and understanding that you are loved no matter what you do, no matter what you do right, no matter what you do wrong. Like you are absolutely chosen and adored by me,
Yep.
you know? And the community that follows likewise because they're convicted by that same truth and that
Right.
same person, and then boom, you got people selling everything.
It's game over.
It's game over.
Yep.
It's freaking game over.
Right.
Because people actually like care about each other and they start coming into conversations being like, not being like, I need to get this off my chest. But no, we pray all the time. We get that stuff off our chest and then we come together and we're like, hey, yo, how you doing? And we mean it. And then we sit down and we pause and we take a lot of time because our schedules aren't like, oh,
Right.
hey, I'm sorry, man.
Right.
Cool. You know what I mean? And it becomes genuine because, you know, I've had a lot of people come up to me who are like, hey man, hey John, how you doing? Doing good? Cool. Okay. Yep. That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. That's great, John. Hey, let me see you. I'll see you later, bud.
Right.
Okay. Have a good one. And you're like,
Throw up my mouth.
oh, hey man, are you okay? I want to stop that person and be like, are you doing good? You're looking for something. This
Right.
whole conversation, you're probably looking for somebody really, really important, which is what I see. And I recognize that's not me. That's okay. I'm not offended by this. I'm not offended that you don't see me right now. That's okay. What I do see is that you're looking for somebody to define your worth in this given moment. You're looking for somebody to see you.
Yep.
And hey, man, I see you. And maybe my eyes don't matter so much to you, but what you're looking for will never satisfy you.
Yep.
You should come hang out in my community. Here's a practical space. Here's a practical time. There's a lot of people who love Jesus. They're real messy. They're not perfect. They don't own Fortune 500s,
Right.
but they legitimately love Jesus. And they'll love you like dogs, just with their tails wagging when you enter the door, just like psyched out of their brains. Like, okay, you're here.
Right.
Hi, hello, you exist. Oh my gosh, like things are awesome. Let's play.
Right.
Let's work.
Right.
Let's rest. Oh my gosh. Hey, whatever you want to do. How are you? Are things good? Hey, I want to match your stoke. Hey.
Right.
And your tails are just like crazy. Wagging.
Right.
And I want that for my friends. And that's a hope that's found in Jesus and that is found in Christianity and communities centered around Christianity. So in all of this stuff that we initially talked about with like suicide and depression and mental like battles that are being waged all day long, we have endless hope for our friends.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So good, man.
Amazing.
Thank you for watching. Hope you liked it. Feel free to check out more videos, like some here, and other places. There'll be some place. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to subscribe and all the other stuff. Catch you in the next one. Peace.